Ready? הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
The challenge, I think, is interwoven with the opportunity. The things that are tougher always yield the greatest return for our effort. And so what I'm referring to is the need to put some energy into transforming yourself, transitioning not just into the space, but into the headspace, to be ready for what could happen tonight. What might happen tonight? You might hear a melody that lifts your spirit in ways you couldn't have anticipated. You might hear an idea from the Siddur, or from our guest speaker, or from a person you speak with at the Oneg that just rocks your perspective. You might have none of that and simply leave feeling better because you were here. Being here can make you a better person. I heard that once. And I suggest that you assign no expectation, but every possibility to what this next window of time offers us. This Shabbat, we're here for so many different reasons. I'm looking around the room and I'm thinking about all the different reasons you're here. So many of you are here, of course, to celebrate with the Stujenkis. As Harrison celebrates becoming bar mitzvah tomorrow, it's going to be just a wonderful day. So many of you are here to hear from Rabbi Spratt. Some of you are here to say Kaddish. Some of you are here because where else would you be on Friday night? That's what makes community. All of us here for different reasons, and yet unity emerges from the differences. So to light up our Shabbos candles this evening, we're going to give that honor to Harrison and his grandparents, Mima and Poppy, also known as Joyce and Danny Stujenki. And we'll invite them up to come help us bring just a little bit more light into this room that's already so bright.
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lechadlik ner shel
Shabbat Shalom, all. And folks at home as well, put your Shabbat greetings in the chat box. We're so glad that you're here. The first word of L'chu Ranana, Psalm 95, is L'chu. And it's a conjugation of the same word as from the beginning of Lecha Dodi, Lech. It means come on. But it's an imperative conjugation. It's not a sit back and listen to the performance kind of psalm. And so I'll invite you to just join Cantor Micah as we use Alana Arian's setting for this beautiful psalm, and let's see what it can do for us.
Let us sing unto God, sing unto God a new song. Let us sing unto God, sing unto God a new song. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Again, this time with feeling. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Lechu neranen al Adonai, nariya litzur yishenu, nekadma fanav b'todah, bizmirot nariya lo, bizmirot nariya lo. Now it's your turn. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Let us sing unto God, sing unto God a new song. Let us sing unto God, sing unto God a new song. What is that song? Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai. Yai, lai, la, lai, lai, la, lai.
They say that rabbis and cantors deliver the sermons that they themselves most need to hear. And I can prove it. When I came across from the other side of the room, I was running around to get all the technology and papers and details set up, and I needed that transition that I encouraged you to make. And then I encouraged you to listen for that moment that might lift you. And it just happened for me. That little kavanah you gave. And what is that song? Because how often do we think that they must mean something more profound, more significant, more complex than we really understand? Sometimes it's just a little nigun, a little yai lalais, and we can be lifted higher than we ever expected. Shalom Aleichem, everyone. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're glad that I'm here.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bochem Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruchuni LeShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem LeShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
And we're moving now into Baruch Hu. We're not ready to quite rise to our feet just yet, but just for the guests who are with us, or those who haven't been with us for a while, I'll remind you that I've changed my language just a little bit, so that when it's time for us to lift our bodies physically, I take my cue from the way the court system in Great Britain does. When the judge enters the chambers, the bailiff yells to everybody, "Be upstanding." I love the meaning that's hidden on multiple levels of that. Yeah, stand up, but also be upstanding. So stay where you are for just another few moments.
Do 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 do. Try it again. Do 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 do. Come all of you, come all of us, and bless the one who blesses. Come all of you, come all of us, and bless the one who blesses. Do 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 do. Blessed is the blessed one, blessed is the giver of blessing, blessed in this moment now and every now to come. Blessed is the blessed one, blessed is the giver of blessing, blessed in this moment now and every now to come.
Let's be upstanding.
Come all of you, come all of us, and bless the one who blesses. Come all of you, come all of us, and bless the one who blesses.
hope the rest of you noticed the look of utter thrill and surprise on Cantor Micah's face when you joined her with that doo-doo-doos. Oh my God.
I'm trying to get you all to show off for Ben.
Yeah.
So, don't let me down.
Well done. Let's offer Ma'ariv Aravim together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro Ma'ariv Aravim b'chokhmah poteach sha'arim ובתבונה משנה עיתים, ומחליף את הזמנים, ומסדר את הכוכבים, במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו. בורא יום ולילה, גולל אור מפני חושך, וחושך מפני אור, ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. We continue with Ahavat Olam.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת. Okay, give it a try. אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. אהבת עולם, אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולם. Be an easy part, yalla lies, here we go. Yalla la 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 la, yalla la la yalla la la la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la la yalla la la la, yalla la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael.
And this has become my favorite on-ramp to getting the most out of the Shema. It speaks my theological truth. Those of you who are listening to the podcast, you're hearing it come out in just such explicit ways. There is just one. I am that one, and you are that one, and together, we're that one.
We are one together.
together. So I witness to the world, Adonai Echad, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
You can be settled.
Yadai lai lai, yadai lai lai, yadai lai 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 lai, yadai lai lai, yadai lai lai, yadai lai 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 lai, yadai lai. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך, בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Rhetorical questions are so fun, aren't they? You ask something not expecting an answer. Who is like you, God? The question. What kind of question is that? There's none like God.
Yalalais, here we go. Yalalai, 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 yalalai. Mocha, Bailim Adonai, Mi Kamocha, Nedor Bakodesh, Nora Tehilot, Osefele, Nora Tehilot, Osefele. לפני משה ומרים, באלי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, לעולם olam va'ed. Yalalai, 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 yalalai.
We've got a little time, right, before Noam Katz is here?
You have until May 12th to learn that song. Okay, we'll work on it.
We'll continue with Vishamru.
Vishamru.
Vishameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shameru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yomim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz v'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Ledorotam berit olam.
We are ready for an Amidah, some silence, a time for you. And you know what your options are, but I'll give you a prompt if you care to use it. Reflect back over the last half hour or so and identify the thoughts that have come and gone in your mind. What did you notice? What comments did you make? Henry's got his hand up. He's ready to answer. What worthwhile attention did you spend? And what captured your attention that really had no great need for your attention tonight? Try to identify the observations, maybe even little moments of growth, moments of gratitude, moments of peace. If you use this time of silence to hold on to that which is worth holding on to, it will be time well spent. If you're able, please be upstanding.
Adonai sefatai tiftach
Even much as a teacher, I loved going to school. I felt I did. Now I'm just looking to fill my time so that the day is different than the day before. Well, what am I doing? Where am I going? Before I see the purpose, I took care of that. I love
Can I
taking
set
care of it. There were days that were tough, but you heard me. I never cared. I'm just not here. I feel like I'm so aimless.
Make of us a house for all people. Gather us in hope for all people. Surround us in peace for all people. In wholeness and in love. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך בשלומך. Make of us a house for all people. Gather us in hope for all people. Surround us in peace for all people. In wholeness and in love. Try it again. Make of us a people. There you go. Surround us in hope for all people. Surround us in peace for all people. In wholeness and in love. Make me proud. Shalom Rav. Shalom Rav. Al Yisrael Amcha. Tazim le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha. Tazim le'olam. Tazim le'olam. Tazim le'olam.
When we cantors and rabbis leave the seminary, they have packed us full of all kinds of nuggets of wisdom. And we are just raring to get out there into the Jewish world, most of us to congregations, but obviously beyond that as well. And we can't wait to share all that we've been crammed full of and all the truth that we know. And I remember very distinctly one of my professors who taught the senior seminar saying to us on the way out the door, saying, "You must keep learning." He said, if you stop learning, then you will run out of interesting new things to share with your people in about 18 months. That was disheartening. I will tell you, I thought that the 5 years of school got me at least more than 18 months. I don't know if he was right or not. I think you have poor memories, and so I get to repeat stuff over and over again. But the point is still made that learning, ongoing learning, is what keeps us pliable and vibrant and living. It's true as individuals, and it's true as congregations. One of the most proud elements of Temple Sinai to its rabbi is just how willing we are to see what's next, to stretch our minds, to take in new ideas through adult ed classes or Musar or circles or, oh God, you could fill in so many different blanks. Think of all the different ways you've connected and been connected to Sinai over the years. And so, it's in that spirit that we undertook a process of learning. We are at the most exciting moment in Jewish peoplehood, maybe second only to the year 70, which had some downsides to it as well, I might mention. But out of that emerged some incredible vibrancy that has carried us for 2,000 years. But it's time. It's time for us to look ahead and see what's next. Awaken to the possibilities, if you will. And so, we started a process a couple months ago, facilitated by Dr. Betsy Stone, who walked us through the book written by Rabbis Ben Spratt and Josh Stanton, called Awakenings, looking at the reality on the ground in the Jewish world today to help us try to understand what is really working. When we finish that process of 5 sessions together, we are so lucky to be able to have a very personal connection to one of those authors who's been a long friend of Temple Sinai. Rabbi Spratt is the senior rabbi at Congregation Rodef Shalom in New York City, and, as I mentioned over dinner, husband to Cantor Micah. And so it is with enormous esteem and appreciation and love for Rabbi Spratt that I invite him to our bima tonight to not give you a frontal presentation, that's not how this man does things, but to instead engage you and to stretch your perspective on who we are and who we might yet be. Rabbi Spratt.
It is such a gift to be with you all tonight. And truly, thank you for the blessing of this being a home for my family. And it is a rare gift that we get to actually share Shabbat together. So thank you. What is the story we choose to tell? About 1,500 years ago, there's a story that comes out of the Talmud, a collection of rabbinic writings, telling the tale of Rabbi Akiva and a group of rabbis. At that point, they'd already lived through the destruction of the temple in 70 CE. Generations had gone by, and the heart and the center of the Judaism they loved was fading into the background of the past. And they decided to journey from Babylonia all the way back to Jerusalem. In the story, they stand on Mount Scopus looking over what used to be the old city, the Temple of Jerusalem, but it's in ruins. And they notice that actually where the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant used to stand, that now a fox had made a den, a burrow, out of that place. And the rabbis wail and start weeping and said, this is what's happened. This is what has come of the heart of our tradition. How horrific a world that this is where we are and this is what we see. And then Rabbi Akiva starts to laugh. And the rabbis are horrified, saying, Akiva, what are you doing? How can you laugh? Look at what has happened. And Akiva said, have you not paid attention? The generations before us, the prophets before us, they always said that these walls would come down. But they also said that there would be blessed to be a generation that would be a part of building what comes next. And now we get the work of starting that process. We can tell the story of today in so many different ways. We are living at a time where change is accelerating, where fracture and division define this country. For many of us, if we're looking at our day-to-day experience of this world, is we feel stress and anxiety, and often we spend a lot of energy trying to simply escape from it. We'll tune off the TV. We'll try to go on retreat. We'll try to withdraw from the world because it feels so terrifying right now in so many spaces. And in the context of American Judaism, the story that has been told again and again and again is that it's all coming apart, that we're on the brink of annihilation, that we're about to disappear. And the whole enterprise of what Josh and I tried to do in writing this book was simply to complicate this story a little bit. Because what's amazing is if you go back and read the sermons of rabbis 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 250 years ago, you'll find that the rabbis have said the same thing over and over and over and over again. How dare you change? If you aren't walking into the space, there's something wrong with you. You should not go and marry somebody who's not a part of the faith. That is going to ruin our people. Whatever you do, you need to make sure you don't eat that bacon and cheese sandwich. It's going to destroy Judaism. And generation after generation, the same thing has happened. Is all of a sudden, the exact opposite has emerged. 40 years ago, many of the American Jewish sociologists in this country looked at the rise of interfaith marriage. By that point, over 56% of non-Orthodox Jews were marrying outside of the faith. And they called it a silent Holocaust, and some called it a second Holocaust. To say that marrying outside the faith was going to guarantee the complete abolishment of all of Judaism and Jewish identity within a generation. Today, in the non-Orthodox world, 71% of American Jews marry somebody outside the faith. But what is remarkable is a very different story has emerged. Because today, the American Jewish population is growing at a faster rate than the American population. I want you to just sit in that for a moment. 30, 40 years ago, everyone said that marrying outside the faith was going to, within a generation, mean the disappearance of American Judaism. And instead, what has happened is there are more Jews than ever before. That we find, actually, that interfaith marriage has been a boon to the American population, the American Jewish population, not just in numbers, but in vibrancy, in dynamism. For anyone who's paying attention this past fall and got to experience the rise of anti-Semitism yet again and again and again we see in our history. For any of you who are paying attention to the rhetoric of Kanye West and Kyrie Irving, what was remarkable is something happened in this country that had never happened before in this country's history. Is all of a sudden, the corporations, the politicians, the athletes, the celebrities decided that it would be worse to abandon the American Jewish population than it would be to settle beside the most famous celebrity in the world. We got to see Adidas, founded by Nazis, willing to abandon a $250 million contract just in order to show solidarity with the American Jewish population. But what did the American Jewish community do? We said, the world is about to destroy us. No one cares about us. Instead of lifting up the question, what makes this moment different from all other moments? It's a question we're pretty familiar with, and yet we didn't think to ask it in this moment. What made this moment different? What made this moment such that politicians, left and right, across different political spectra, would be willing to publicly announce their solidarity with the American Jewish population? What would it mean if, in addition to the ringing tones of a world that so often inclines towards fear, we were to acknowledge the fact that something wonderful happened as we found that we have allies? And what would happen if we asked the question, how did we get those allies? Because now 40 million American households are connected to Jews. Now we have, in addition to an American population that's American Jewish population larger than it ever was, we have 2.4 million Americans that have Jewish ancestry, but have lost their connection to Judaism. What about the 1.4 million Americans that identify as Jewishly adjacent, that aren't connected or married into Judaism, but actually just find it to be really wonderful and feel attached to it in some way, shape, or form? We are living in a time where the definitions of failure and the definitions of success are wildly different than past generations could ever have imagined. And so we see something wild taking place. The American synagogue is on the decline. You don't feel it here at Temple Sinai, and I feel blessed at Rhoda Shalom, we're not feeling it either. But if you look around this country, this is the era of synagogue closures and synagogue mergers. For those of you who have friends at other synagogues, I guarantee that many of them are looking at budgets that can't pass, are looking at the question of whether they can afford clergy. We're getting to see a rising crisis, actually, in this country, as there are, of the 9 seminaries that are not Orthodox in this country, the total rabbinic students across those 9 seminaries right now is 124. When you think about what that means for a rising generation, the way that we defined thriving community in this country is very much on the brink. And that's usually the story where we leave it. But what about the other part of the story that's not great for, fundraising and things? As I said during the dinner, by the way, if you ever want to raise money really quickly in the American Jewish population, just say, they're about to kill us. And it'll work, and I mean it. If you go and look at the fundraising bodies that raise the most number of dollars in this country, it always comes right on the heels of a rise of anti-Semitism. And there is good reason, by the way, to want to support the American Jewish population when we face fear. But what if we were willing to go and see, what are we actually investing in? So I want to share with you tonight a few of the exciting things that are emerging in the American Jewish world that are different from the way we often define success. So the last Pew study, for the first time, the Pew study decided to measure things other than, do you belong to a synagogue? Do you light candles on a Friday night? Do you engage in a Passover Seder? And started to ask questions like, do you eat Jewish food? Do you like to watch Israeli TV like Fauda? When you go traveling, are you ever curious about going to a Jewish site like an old synagogue or an old Jewish ruin? Are you curious about reading a Yiddish poem or interested in reading about Israeli literature or following Israeli news? And what was remarkable is that all of a sudden we got to see a tapestry of the American Jewish experience that had never been really recorded before. That actually the American Jewish population is deeply engaged in Judaism. just not in synagogues, from the comfort of their own homes, from the comfort of their own phones. And so we get to see actually that the synagogues that are in decline are actually also then mirroring the rise of so many new organizations. And what we're seeing right now is a renaissance, a golden age of Jewish education. So if you haven't recently thanked Erica for her leadership, you should know that, in my opinion, Erica is a part of what is going to be and herald a new golden age, an awakening of American Judaism. Because you look at where some of the most interesting innovation takes place, it's in learning. It's in realizing that we have one of the greatest wisdom traditions in human history. And people are starting to wake up to it and realizing that maybe, just maybe, there's something really special here that people want to drink in. If you haven't heard of Hadar, Yeshivat Hadar, I encourage you to do so. Trying to empower people of all skill levels of learning to realize that you can hold the tools to unlock any Jewish text. If you haven't heard of Pardes Institute or Shalom Hartman Institute, two organizations based in Israel that have planted footholds here in North America because they realize that we are hungry to learn. If you haven't heard of Sefaria, I encourage you, if you want even right now, to pull out your phones and download the Sefaria app. You can access almost any Jewish text in our tradition that has ever been written, and most of them in translation. That all of a sudden you can hold in the palm of your hand thousands of years of wisdom that until recently you'd have to go and study in yeshiva or a seminary for years to be able to access. So suddenly we're getting this amazing rise of a new power dynamic. My profession has been predicated on the disempowerment of you all. I get to have a great job because my community believes they need me in order to have an authentic Jewish experience. And I can't think of something that's more anathema to our rabbinic tradition than that statement right there. If we go back to the story of Rabbi Akiva and those rabbis in the Talmud, all of them had day jobs. They were carpenters, they were beer brewers, they repaired shoes. They were rabbis because they chose as a hobby to study and learn, and people wanted to turn to them for wisdom, not because they were an intermediary, not because they were holier than anyone else, but simply because they were more curious and wanted to learn. And so what we see right now is fewer and fewer synagogues can afford a rabbi or a cantor. But what's coming of that is that people are learning that they can roll up their sleeves and become leaders and actually be empowered to shape their own Judaism. If you haven't heard of Haggadot.com and you're thinking about doing a Seder, not joining the Temple Sinai one, which I will be with you at, by the way, I'm very excited. It's one of my favorite Seders every year, is, by the way, you could right now access thousands of Haggadot that other people have created. You can go and make your own, pulling from this one and this one. There's even one this year that was written by ChatGPT if you want. I'm not joking, okay? What happens when we start to reclaim the ability for us to be creators of Judaism, not just consumers of it? And for me, this is some of what is so exciting right now is finally the things that really had to be relegated to those who had the luxury or the responsibility to spend years and years of study, all of a sudden, you can drink from this well without needing me or even the amazing brilliance of Rabbi Jay or Cantor Micah. But you still will need them for this reason. Because the power of Judaism and the wisdom of this tradition was never meant to be experienced alone. Our early rabbis taught that wisdom can only be experienced in relationship. And Judaism offers, I think, one of the greatest technologies for the ills of the world today, which is the idea of chavruta, the idea of learning and fellowship. Our sages said that God will only come to sit in between at least two people. That for those of you like me that love to consume our knowledge alone in a room with a screen or with a book, that is not the pathway to wisdom. In fact, our sages would argue that is a pathway to a dull mind. The people with the greatest cognitive bias in this world are the people with the greatest and highest level of education. I'll let that sink in as well. Because I grew up believing that the more you know, the more books you read, the more degrees you have on your wall, the wiser you are. But what it means is we tend to, on our own, cull the information that reinforces our own beliefs, whether we know it or not. And so the greatest and most biased people usually are the most educated people, which means if we want to get wiser, we have to sit with somebody that looks at the world differently from us, that pushes us to encounter something new, that forces us to imagine that maybe, just maybe, there might be something delightful that we haven't yet experienced. And so I wanted to bring a bit of a challenge to the Temple Sinai community, if you will, and then you can push back at me in a moment here. So I want you to tell me what you think of when you hear this. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu. What do you think of? Nobody's going to tell me? Barbara Streisand. Oh, that's so thoughtful. Thank you. I love you. Okay. Maybe I should have done my falsetto voice. I'd embarrass my kids if I did, okay? Barbara Streisand, I love that. Any other associations other than Barbara?
Yeah,
Matt
Kipper.
Janowski, thank you so much. By the way, woo! Okay. For most people, at least in my community, that melody is one of the great anthems of the high holidays. It would be almost impossible to imagine the high holidays without hearing that melody. That yes, we like the Avinu Malkeinu, but we know that it's when the cantor actually lifts those notes of the Janowski Avinu Malkeinu into the stratosphere, and if we're feeling bold, maybe we're humming along a little bit, that we're transported to a different place. Having gone into the archives of Rod Shalom, I was able to actually find when that melody was introduced at Rod Shalom. So Max Janowski composed Avinu Malkeinu, the one that we were just lifting up here, 70 years ago. It was introduced at Rod Shalom 62 years ago and was met with an uproar from the community. People were furious because it took this great chazanic tradition that lifted notes into the stratosphere that no one could touch, and it brought it actually down to a more accessible level. If you've never noticed this before, you actually can sing along with the cantor, whether she wants you to or not. It's a whole other thing, okay? But what's amazing about the Max Janowski melody is it actually takes those incredible lilting notes of high chazanas and makes it accessible for the average person. And people are furious. People shouldn't be singing along. This is for only the cantor to sing. And I bring this forward because the thing that I experienced, both being married to a cantor and working alongside several cantors, is that when you change the melody, people are ready to riot. And so I want to bring a parallel for you for a moment, and then comes my push. We have the first Reformed Jewish Day School as a part of Congregation Rod Shalom. Something that a little over 50 years ago, the American Jewish world said was ridiculous. Why would a Reformed community start a day school? That's insane. We also happen to have a pretty vibrant cafeteria in it. And one of my favorite things to do is to go into the cafeteria and watch what the kids are eating. And especially in our elementary division, about 60 to 80% of the kids on an average day are eating plain noodles and saltines. Now, meanwhile, there is a beautiful salad bar. There is usually 3 or 4 different main courses, lots and lots of other things, but they just eat their plain pasta. And for any of us who are foodies, if we always ate the same thing, imagine what we miss out on. Imagine the flavors, the textures, the different culture, the different understandings, the different things that stir in us from encountering the new. And yet, when we walk into a synagogue, most of us want to simply bathe in nostalgia. And the thing that most synagogues sell more than anything else is nostalgia, is wanting you to believe that it was so much better back then. And the challenge I want to put forward to you is that most of what made the good old days feel like the good old days is all the things we weren't aware of. Because it wasn't that good back then, whatever era you want to talk about. That much of the reason why we have the flavors of borscht is because of Jewish poverty. Much of the reason why we have those lilting chazanic tunes is because of the pain and the anguish of pogroms that inspired them. That many of the things that make us feel most authentic in Judaism emerged out of pain and suffering. And so when we walk into a space and we say to our clergy, please just give me the plain pasta and saltines that I grew up with, if we just believe that drinking from the well of nostalgia is the purpose of Judaism, we've lost our way. The most observed ritual in Judaism today is a Passover Seder. Over 70% of Jews around the world will experience some sort of Seder in just a few weeks here. What most of us don't know is that we stole the Seder from the Greeks and the Romans. That is not actually an authentic Jewish experience, if you want to define it that way. That as we look backwards, the early rabbis were looking at waning observance of Passover. They saw that people didn't understand what to do. Back in the Bible, you had to go and bring your little lamb to the temple, sacrifice the lamb, and then you went home and had a delicious meal. They had to come up with something when you didn't have a temple anymore and couldn't bring that lamb to the temple. And so what did they do? They looked at, what's the party that I don't get to be invited to? What's the coolest place in town that only the creme de la creme get to go to? It is a Greco-Roman symposium. And whether you know it or not, we still actually have the whispers of that still in our seders today. At a Greco-Roman symposium, you would be given a chaise lounge chair because it was for the elite. People would bring forward waves of food, and you would just wax philosophical on the meaning of the food. And you would know that the meal was coming to an end when people would bring out the dessert course, which in Greek is called afikomen. We don't realize it, but what we are doing as the most observed and authentic Jewish ritual in the world today used to be a Greek orgy party. I'll give you another example. On Hanukkah, we spin this little thing. Dreidel! Amazing. Most of us grew up with the story that the dreidel actually goes back to the time of the Maccabees, and when the Assyrian Greeks had banned and barred the idea of studying Torah, we would do this as a little distraction. Anyone heard that story before? Nobody's heard that story before? Really? Okay, well, maybe this isn't surprising to you then. The origin of the dreidel is that it was a popular gambling game 300 years ago in Western Europe. That was really where dreidel started. It was the equivalent of maybe poker in America today. If you were not aware of this, you should know that biblically and rabbinically, you are prohibited from gambling in Judaism. Sorry. And yet, when you think of one of the great icons of this holiday, somehow now we're gambling, and we're playing what used to be a popular gambling game in Europe. And I bring this forward because when we think of what is authentic, it simply means an innovation that took root. When we think of a tradition, it's simply some wild idea that took hold. And so my push to you is twofold. One is, when you encounter a rabbi and a cantor that are defying the trends of the times and are trying to do something new, my hope is that you will applaud them. Because most of our peers are not doing that. They're simply just selling nostalgia because it's the easiest way to get the people who are already here to stay here. But just like the plain pasta, if that's all we serve, the most exciting experiences are going to take place elsewhere. So when you encounter a new melody from Cantor Micah, even if it's a melody that you can't stand, my push is imagine when you had your parents telling you, try it the next time. Take another couple bites or two. You never know, you might develop a palate for it. But to offer gratitude for the person who's daring to go out on a limb, to imagine how do we continue to do what is most traditional in Judaism, which is continue to remix it and remake it again and again and again. And when you have a rabbi who's defying what is most common in our profession, I would argue, of daring you to dream 20 years out, to applaud and celebrate and do the second part of this push. In the Torah, Moses says, when hearing that Eldad and Medad came forward to play the prophet. Everyone was expecting him to shut them down. And instead he said, would that all of God's people would be prophets. The great vision of Judaism is not that you simply sit here as consumers of the amazingness of your clergy, but that your clergy are igniting you to become leaders and co-creators. How many of you, raise your hand if you were in a Sinai circle. Raise your hand if you are in Ruach or Kolot Sinai. Raise your hand if you volunteer here in any way, shape, or form. Raise your hand if you were willing to actually lift your voice tonight, even if it's not a voice that you normally would publicly share out there in the world. So I want to say to you, that is what makes the future so exciting, is that finally we are in a generation where we have people who are willing to, on their own volition, create something new, to dare to dream, not just to go and say, this is what I want you to create, but to dare to dream and say, I'm ready to raise my hand and create it. So my last push to you is to see that that impulse, that is what makes this a dazzling age. And that when you feel a need in your life, or when you see a miss in Temple Sinai, that instead of telling other people what they need to do, that when you notice that, raise your hand and say, tell me how to build it, and let me be a part of co-creating, so that years down the line, your clergy will look up and say, we have created a community of leaders. We have built the greatest response to this world of division, that we have dared to tell the story that's needed right now, which is that each of us are needed and necessary, but that we will only flourish if we actually raise our hands, choose to step forward, and build something together. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
He said, I hope that was okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've often thought, too, that my greatest success would be to put myself out of a job, because it meant that I had accomplished what Rabbi Spratt just encouraged us towards. But lucky for me, that contract that we talked about last year, I'm good. I'm good. Cantor, when did Debbie Friedman give us Misha Berach?
Oh, like in the 70s.
That long ago? Yeah. I didn't think it was even that far back. 1972. You know, in that time,
Before I was born.
you see, she just signed a new contract too, so she's fine doing that. The proof of something good that enters our ecosystem and spreads like wildfire would be Debbie's Misha Berach. Now, you know, could you even imagine that something that came out of the Reform world would be heard in the sanctuaries of Orthodox and conservative synagogues, not, you know, including Reconstructionists as well? It's because it does what it's supposed to. Every once in a while, I can slip in Heal Us Now, or rather, you can slip in. But generally, this is, I won't say it's noodles and saltines, but this is something that we come to rely on because we know what it does for us.
In Zentangle, we would say it's a mac and cheese song. It's like comfort food.
Yeah, I like that.
Sometimes that's okay.
Yeah. So let's use it the way it's supposed to have been used. Let's open our hearts, listening to names, those you know. Those you don't, you'll have to just imagine somebody out there just like you who is in need of these prayers and bring them into your heart. Let's pray for them as if they were your dearest loved ones. I'm going to share a few names that we have, and then at home too. Oh, good, I see you're already populating the chat box. This evening, we are praying for Susan Platt, Irv and Gail Ladden, Reg Rabjohns, and Neil Johnson, Carmia Chaya Chadas Bat Zipporah Miriam, David Michael Ben Freda, Beryl Ben Chaya, Leslie Keogh, Madeline Carlitz,
Irving Picard, Anne Rosenbaum, Fran Walsh, Dave Kaplan, Richard Crane, Jeffrey Augen, Willard Skolnick, Marion O'Grady, Martha Moresco, Sid Halsban, Judy Feig, Jacob F., William Gerstmann, Ann Rosenbaum, Sharon X., Barry and Anna and Haley Cohen, Robin Matisse, Linda Carr, Barry Silver, Sylvia Brooks, Andy Hughes, Tony Hughes, Ellen Hughes, Lois Osterwitz, Nanette Adaho, Marilyn Morgofsky.
And to those names, we add
Sharon Glenn. Alex Berto. Joe Dorison.
with your whole heart.
Before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Think of the meal that Rabbi Spratt was encouraging us to savor, that meal that changed you. You had it someplace special. You were with someone special, perhaps. Maybe it was a special occasion. Maybe it was someplace far off, but the experience is still viscerally available to you. I think you've got your example in mind. Now, that is this Aleinu. So, if you're able, please be upstanding.
It's up to us to call ourselves to task, to sing what's good and true, to bring about redemption. It's what we were free to do. For what's the point of being here if we're not moved to change our ways? Aleinu leshabeach. It's time to live our praise. We are carrying the stories of the ones who came before. What stories will be told of us when we are here no more? We commit ourselves to action. It brings meaning to our days. Aleinu leshabeach. It's time to live our praise. It's up to us to own the vision. We are an answer to a call. It's up to us to live the words we speak for the benefit of all. It's up to us to bow down deeply. There's a broken world to raise. Aleinu leshabeach. It's time to live our praise. Aleinu leshabeach. It's time to live our praise. Va'anachnu kor'im u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'ne'emar Adonai melech kol haaretz vayom
And think about the words, it's time to live our praise. You wouldn't know how to do that without some of those people who imprinted themselves upon you. We remember, we honor, we cherish, we say Kaddish. For the recent losses of Lana Fink, grandmother to Max and Sadie, and Arthur Reingold, husband of Helene Reingold, to David Heckerling, Jeremy's father, and to Barbara Baker Haberman, Stacy Ochoa's mother. And this Shabbat marks yahrzeits for Jack Cohn, Larry Joshua Cohn, Leonard Elliott, Benson Hawker, Michael Himmelstein, Anna Jacobson, Morris Carlin, Barbara Kay, Rose Levy, Martin Lowenthal, Paul Oster, Celia Jean Ozeroff, Eugenia Portnoy, Cyril Gordon Portnoy, Ruth Sandek, Eleanor Schneider, Ellen Seligman, Alex Stujenki, Helen Stujenki, Leah Ruth Sverdlov, Fanny Tannenbaum, and Harry Tannenbaum. Are there others who are saying Kaddish tonight? Yehi zichronam livracha. May their memories be a blessing so that we can live our praise as together we say, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divarach hirute ve'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam ul'almei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shalom rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru amen. May God comfort those who are recently bereaved and teach the rest of us how to ease the mourning of those that we love, as together we say, Amen.
Amen.
And you can be settled. Couple of items to know about in the immediate future. First of all, thank you to Larry and Susie Stujenki for sponsoring tonight's oneg in honor of their son becoming bar mitzvah tomorrow. And some of your coworkers, Larry, had some contributions to the oneg out of love for what you do with us and what the family is to us. Tomorrow morning, services will be at 10:30. There'll be Bible study at 9 o'clock. Sunday morning, we've got religious school I was listening for groans, but actually they're not in this house, not here. After religious school at 11:30, if you're in the Ruju Singers with Cantor Micah, we've got a rehearsal tomorrow. And then if you are part of the Cook and Kibitz group with Anthony and Amanda Stark Sherman, then they'll be meeting on Sunday at 5:30. Next Friday, we'll have Torah study as always at noon with Cantor Micah, and then services are at 6 p.m. I've mentioned it once or twice, but we have an Avodat Halev service next Saturday at 9 a.m. And then for those who know that they like this kind of thing or think they could like this kind of thing, Cantor Micah and I and Ronnie Lillian will be leading a half-day meditation retreat following that. And the entire cost has been underwritten by Gary and Ronnie. Thank you so much for that. So we hope that you'll come and join us for that day of introspection and contemplation and deep presence. We've got our Temple Gala, Sinai Gala coming up on the 22nd of April. Save that date. It's going to be a fabulous night as we honor Mark Friedman and the Pardos as foundationally important to who we are. Larry, did I forget anything to mention? I got it all? Yeah? Thank you, Gary. There's a Brotherhood meeting Sunday, 10 o'clock. Shelley? Second night Passover Seder. It's going to be so much fun this year. Come join us. I heard Rabbi Spratt's going to be there. Still plenty of time to sign up. It's something that Temple Sinai really underwrites the cost of so that we can include everybody. And if that is a barrier, please let me know. We will happily make sure you're there. Check the chat. Okay. In the chat. Okay. Glenn says that there's Molotov practice at 12:30 on Sunday. Oh,
Kolot Sinai.
Kolot practice.
I've had that happen before.
Yeah. Okay.
Molotov is not a good autocorrect.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn, for making sure we know about the Molotov practice on Sunday. Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you to Ayala for helping make sure the people at home had the slides that they needed to participate. Thank you to everybody who made tonight possible. Thank you to Rabbi Spratt for being with us this evening. It was so meaningful. Oh, look at that. You're getting applause. With that, let's go ahead and finish out our service with Halleli, another piece that was set by Noam Katz. You've got plenty of time to learn this one too before he joins us in another couple months.
Halleli nafshi et Adonai. Halleli nafshi et Adonai. Halleli nafshi et Adonai. Halleli nafshi et Adonai.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Adonai. nafshi et Adonai. Halleli, nafshi et Adonai. Halleli, nafshi et Adonai. Halleli, nafshi et Adonai.
Ask yourself, what happened tonight? Did anything happen? You're darn right it did, Henry. You're darn right it did. Something happened and you were here. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.